Alma's escape was not without its challenges. The facility was a labyrinth of cold, sterile corridors, each one more disorienting than the last. Her heightened senses picked up the faintest sounds, the distant hum of machinery, the scurrying of rodents in the walls. Her mind, now a chaotic blend of human and beast, struggled to maintain focus as she navigated the maze-like structure. Every step she took echoed ominously, the metallic clang reverberating through the empty halls. Her mutated limbs, a grotesque fusion of flesh and cybernetic enhancements, carried her with an unnatural grace, her elongated claws clicking against the cold floor. Her heart pounded in her chest, a constant reminder of the monstrous transformation she had undergone. As she rounded a corner, Alma's heightened senses detected movement ahead. She tensed, her muscles coiling like a spring, ready to pounce. A group of guards appeared, their faces masked by fear and determination. They raised their weapons, but Alma was faster. She lunged at them, her claws slicing through flesh and bone with terrifying ease. Blood sprayed across the walls, the coppery scent mingling with the sterile air. The guards' screams echoed through the corridors, a symphony of agony that only fueled Alma's rage. She tore through them with a savage ferocity, her mutated body moving with a speed and precision that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. When the last of the guards lay dead at her feet, Alma paused, her chest heaving with exertion. She looked down at her blood-soaked hands, the reality of her actions sinking in. The primal part of her reveled in the carnage, but a small, flickering ember of her humanity recoiled in horror. She shook her head, trying to dispel the conflicting emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. Pushing forward, Alma continued her escape. She encountered more guards along the way, each one meeting a gruesome end at her hands. Her path was marked by a trail of bodies, a testament to the unstoppable force she had become. As she neared the exit, Alma's thoughts turned to the scientists who had orchestrated her torment. She could still see their cold, calculating eyes, hear their sadistic laughter as they inflicted unimaginable pain upon her and the other prisoners. Her rage burned hotter than ever, a searing inferno that threatened to consume her. Bursting through the final door, Alma found herself in a vast underground laboratory. The walls were lined with glass tanks, each one containing a grotesque, half-formed creature. She recognized some of them as her fellow prisoners, their bodies twisted and mutated beyond recognition. The sight filled her with a renewed sense of purpose. She would make the scientists pay for their atrocities. At the far end of the lab, a group of scientists huddled together, their faces pale with fear. Alma stalked towards them, her eyes blazing with fury. One of the scientists, a tall man with graying hair and a cruel smile, stepped forward. "Ah, Alma," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I see you've managed to escape. Impressive, but ultimately futile. You are our creation, and you will never be free." Alma's lips curled into a snarl. "You made me a monster," she growled. "Now you'll face the consequences." With a roar, she lunged at the scientist, her claws tearing through his lab coat and into his flesh. He screamed, a high-pitched wail that was abruptly cut off as Alma ripped his throat out. Blood sprayed across her face, but she barely noticed. She was consumed by a single driving need: vengeance. The other scientists tried to flee, but Alma was too fast. She hunted them down one by one, her claws and teeth rending flesh from bone. The lab was soon filled with the stench of death, the floor slick with blood. When the last of the scientists lay dead, Alma stood amidst the carnage, her chest heaving with exertion. She had avenged herself and the others, but the victory felt hollow. She was still a monster, a twisted abomination created by their cruel experiments. As she surveyed the destruction, Alma's thoughts turned to the world outside. She had no place in it, no hope of ever being accepted. Her mutated form was a constant reminder of the horrors she had endured, and the primal instincts that now drove her would never allow her to live a normal life. With a heavy heart, Alma turned and left the lab. She emerged into the cold night air, the stars twinkling overhead. She was free, but she was also alone, a solitary predator in a world that would never understand her. The forest surrounding the facility was dense and foreboding, the trees casting long shadows in the moonlight. Alma moved through the underbrush with a predatory grace, her heightened senses alert for any sign of danger. As she ventured deeper into the woods, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Suddenly, a rustling sound caught her attention. Alma tensed, her claws ready to strike. From the shadows emerged a figure, cloaked in darkness. The stranger stepped into the moonlight, revealing a tall, lean man with piercing green eyes and a weathered face. His clothes were tattered, his hair unkempt, but there was an air of quiet strength about him. "Who are you?" Alma demanded, her voice a low growl. The man raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "My name is Elias," he said calmly. "I've been watching you. I know what they've done to you." Alma's eyes narrowed. "How do you know?" Elias sighed, his expression filled with a deep sadness. "Because they did the same to me many years ago. I managed to escape, but I've been living in the shadows ever since, trying to help others like us." Alma's heart skipped a beat. Could it be true? Was there someone who understood her pain, who had endured the same horrors? She studied Elias closely, noting the faint scars that marred his skin, the haunted look in his eyes. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. Elias stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "Because I want to help you. I know what it's like to be hunted, to feel like a monster. But you're not alone, Alma. There are others out there, survivors who have banded together. We can help you control your abilities, find a way to live in this world." Alma's mind raced, torn between hope and fear. Could she really trust this stranger? Could she dare to believe that there was a place for her in the world? Elias extended a hand, his expression earnest. "Come with me, Alma. Let me show you that there's more to life than pain and vengeance." After a moment's hesitation, Alma reached out and took his hand. As their fingers intertwined, she felt a spark of hope ignite within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance for redemption, for a life beyond the horrors of the past. Together, they ventured into the forest, leaving the facility and its nightmarish memories behind. As they walked, Elias shared his story, revealing the tragic events that had led him to this point. He spoke of the experiments that had twisted his body and mind, the years spent in hiding, and the small group of survivors he had found along the way. Alma listened intently, her heart aching with empathy. She realized that Elias's story was not so different from her own. They were both victims of a cruel and inhumane system, but they had also found the strength to survive, to fight back. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, they arrived at a hidden enclave nestled deep within the forest. The survivors greeted them with cautious curiosity, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope. Alma felt a sense of belonging that she had never known before, a glimmer of hope that perhaps in this place she could find a new beginning. Over the following weeks, Alma trained with the survivors, learning to control her abilities and harness her newfound strength. She forged bonds with others who had endured similar torments, their shared experiences creating a deep sense of camaraderie. Together, they planned their next move, determined to bring down the facility and put an end to the experiments once and for all. As Alma stood at the edge of the forest, gazing out at the world beyond, she felt a sense of purpose that she had never known before. She was no longer a prisoner, no longer a victim. She was a warrior, a survivor, and she would fight for those who could not fight for themselves. But as the days turned into weeks, Alma began to notice something unsettling about Elias. His demeanor shifted, his eyes taking on a calculating glint. He would disappear for hours, returning with bloodstains on his clothes and a haunted look in his eyes. Alma's instincts, honed by her own experiences, began to sense that something was amiss. One night, as the survivors gathered around a campfire, Elias stood up and addressed the group. "We have a new mission," he announced, his voice filled with a fervent intensity. "There are enemies out there, people who seek to destroy us. We must strike first, eliminate them before they can harm us." Alma's heart sank. She had hoped for peace, for a chance to rebuild her life, but Elias's words were filled with a dark, vengeful energy that sent chills down her spine. As the group prepared for their mission, Alma pulled Elias aside. "Who are these enemies?" she demanded. "Why are we attacking them?" Elias's eyes narrowed. "They are a threat to us, Alma. They are responsible for the experiments, for the suffering we've endured. We must destroy them to ensure our survival." Alma's mind raced. She had trusted Elias, believed in his vision of a better future. But now, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was using them for his own dark purposes. As they set out on their mission, Alma's doubts grew. The targets Elias had identified were not scientists or guards, but ordinary people, living in small, isolated communities. The survivors, driven by their own pain and anger, followed Elias's lead, their eyes filled with a desperate need for vengeance. Alma watched in horror as they descended upon the first village, their mutated forms tearing through the unsuspecting inhabitants. The air was filled with the screams of the innocent, the scent of blood and fear. Alma's heart ached as she realized the truth. Elias was using them as weapons, manipulating their pain and anger to further his own twisted agenda. As the carnage unfolded, Alma made a decision. She could not allow this to continue. She had to stop Elias, to protect the innocent from the horrors she had endured. With a fierce determination, Alma confronted Elias. "This isn't justice," she shouted, her voice filled with anguish. "This is murder. You're using us to satisfy your own thirst for vengeance." Elias's eyes blazed with fury. "You don't understand, Alma. They are all complicit. They must pay for what they've done." Alma shook her head, her heart breaking. "No, Elias, this isn't the way. We can't become the monsters they made us." With a roar of rage, Elias lunged at her, his claws bared. Alma met his attack head-on, her own mutated strength matching his. They fought with a savage intensity, their bodies a blur of motion and violence. As they battled, Alma's mind raced. She had to find a way to end this, to stop Elias before he could cause more harm. With a surge of adrenaline, she managed to pin him to the ground, her claws at his throat. "Please, Elias," she begged, her voice trembling. "Stop this. We can find another way." But Elias's eyes were filled with madness, his mind consumed by his own pain and rage. With a final desperate effort, Alma drove her claws into his chest, ending his life. As Elias's body went limp, Alma felt a wave of sorrow wash over her. She had lost a friend, a mentor, someone who had understood her pain. But she had also saved countless lives, prevented the cycle of violence from continuing. With a heavy heart, Alma returned to the survivors. They looked at her with a mix of fear and respect, their eyes filled with questions. Alma knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that they would have to find a new way to live, to heal from the horrors they had endured. But for now, they had each other, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, Alma stood at the edge of the forest, gazing out at the world beyond. She knew that her journey was far from over, that there were still battles to be fought, enemies to be faced. But she also knew that she was not alone. She had found a new family, a new purpose. And no matter what the future held, she would continue to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. And so, Alma's story continued, a tale of pain and redemption, of darkness and light. The world was a harsh and unforgiving place, but Alma was ready to face it head-on, to carve out a place for herself in a world that had tried to destroy her. The journey ahead would be long and arduous, but Alma was determined to see it through. She had found her strength, her purpose, and she would not let anything stand in her way.